Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling podcast here on YouTube and Daily Motion. I've been saying in the last couple episodes, I am looking into other facets of releasing this to broaden the audience of everything, but that's going to take a little bit of time and some more work. That's going to it won't be something that happens that quickly. So for the time being, we are exclusive on YouTube and Daily Motion. But this episode of Godsaw's Turnbuckle is going to focus around Impact Wrestling on May 25th, 2017. Let's just get right into it. First of all, I actually felt like a good portion of this show was actually rather good. And they threw you a nice little surprise in there into something that I was not really caring for, but they had to put a big name in there somehow in some way. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But they started off the show with Bruce Pritchard coming out. He basically he has Tyrus with him, so he said he got Tyrus hired to be a bit of protection for him from after what EC3 had done to him. So he was going to do some kind of review and everything in that sense down the road. But he brings out Bobby Lashley and he starts wanting to talk about the Slammiversary main event and who would be facing him for that World Heavyweight title. First of all, they're focusing on an Impact World title. Novel concept. Even though there is some focus around the GFW tag team titles a little bit later on. I mean, they're going to be continuing on with this, obviously. But it was one of those things. It was a novel concept, and it was nice. I was glad to see them focus on the belts that I don't know are part of the company in some way. So he basically had said he announced last week that there would be a triple threat match with Magnus, James Storm, and EC3. All three of those guys kind of come out and do the normal shtick where EC3 eventually comes out. He cuts a promo on everything and nothing too much about it. Basically says he's going to become an EC3 time champion, kind of what we've heard before in the past. Not bad stuff, nothing out of the norm. Magnus comes out, he cuts his promo on winning and eventually going to face Bobby Lashley at Slammiversary, which also has James Storm come out. He cuts his promo. And eventually, James Storm wanted to get the fight going right then and there. And Bruce Pritchard was basically saying, it's like, okay, that's absolutely fine. And I'm completely okay with that. But if any of you guys touch each other before the actual match itself, so he basically instills a no touching rule throughout the night, which they don't even tease at all. They don't even tease any of this at all in any way, shape, or form. You get like a smidget of a tease afterwards. And then he goes ahead and makes the triple threat match a little bit later on. No DQ, which, wait a minute, that's all triple threat matches anyway. So, what was the point of that? That was the one downside. That was definitely one downside to it. This segment was actually quite decent. But one thing that they didn't do throughout the night, which would have been interesting if they went ahead and did it, you have a no touching rule until the match starts. And you have one small little tease of EC3 getting in James Storm's face afterwards. But that's all you ended up getting. Why not have all three of these guys, or have EC3 in some way try to antagonize Magnus or James Storm throughout the night and try to get them to like punch them or something in that sense to try to get them out of the match? It would have been interesting, at least. I don't know how fun it would have been, but it would have been an interesting way of going, especially since it was a one night thing. Usually, if you get that whole no touching, you got to go weeks and weeks and weeks without doing it. And they do those teases where they can't fight each other. But it would have been interesting if they would have like kind of fast forward through all of that and done it within a single night time span, which they ended up not doing. Afterwards, and you also just for the sake for talking about this before we talk about the triple threat match as the main event itself, you did get promos from like James Storm, EC3, and Magnus in the backstage, basically on the triple threat match in them and talking about how they would win. Again, good promos in their own right. Nothing spectacular in any way, shape, or form was said throughout any of that time, though. So up next was the tag team match with KM and Congo Kong going up against Muhammad Ali and Braxton Sutter. This was a decent match. I did find this match rather enjoyable. Nothing too memorable. We kind of seen what we've seen from Congo Kong and everything in that sense. It's good to see Muhammad Ali back on there. It's kind of weird to watch how some of these people just disappear and then come back and then disappear again and then they come back and it's not like it's 1 week they're gone, 1 week they're gone, next week they're back. It's more like 1 week they're there and then they're gone for 2-3 months sometimes in that case. But it was a decent match, so it was a rather enjoyable one to watch. The brawl does continue afterwards, where you have Braxton Sutter and Muhammad Ali fight with Congo Kong and KM. They go to the back as Ali and Sienna attack, or not Ali, but Laurel Van Ness and Sienna attack Ali inside the ring. This prompts, out of nowhere, I mean, in the terms of story, no real reason for it, outside the fact that Sienna's, I guess, the GFW Women's Champion, so that's going to cause some kind of match at Slammiversary, I would assume. But Rosemary comes out, and she does this whole tease. It's like, who is she going to go after and everything in that sense. And then she attacks Laurel Van Ness and Sienna and basically saving Ali in that sense of it. And if it is that's where they're going to go with it, it's how it's going to end up going, where they have Rosemary. She's the Knockouts champion. You got to have her doing something. And if they're going to be working with these Global Force Wrestling titles, which I don't really like, but whatever, in that sense, you'll have to have them working together. And I guess they're going to be merging the titles, which again, to me, is pointless, but I guess to other people it's not so pointless. They could have worked this exact same storyline without necessarily having the GFW title in the works and all this. But Rosemary comes out and gets rid of Laurel Van Ness and Sienna, and basically saves Ali in this case. Doesn't give her a full, like, it's not like one of those bits where they shake hands or anything in that sense. But it was kind of just implied that she was saving Ali in this case. And honestly, wasn't a bad segment all in all. I actually did rather enjoy this segment. It's just the storyline premise might, for Sienna and Rosemary, might be something I'm not going to personally care about. Up next was Falaba and Mario Baraka going up against the Veterans of War. And again, this was a decent match, but this was also put in there as a GFW Tag Team title semifinal match, which means the winner would go to face LAX the next week. Based off of where they were going in the storylines, this was kind of predictable where they were going to go for the finals. It was going to be Veterans of War going up against LAX based off of what happened a couple weeks ago. Like I said, the match itself was fine. I don't really care about this whole GFW merger thing that they're working with. It just doesn't work for me. So the whole aspect of the tag team titles, those tag team titles being involved, really doesn't mean much in the grand scheme to me in that sense. But you were kind of expecting them to go this route, so they're going to have the match next week. I would assume they're going to have another match at Slammiversary or something in that sense, and we'll see where they go with everything. If the whole thing about Slammiversary is going to be this merger of the GFW, of the Global Force Wrestling titles and the Impact titles, you would assume Veterans of War win next week. That way, when they have the match again, at Slammiversary, then you have the full merger of the titles. Though they could just go with the aspect of LAX going over, and they hold all the tag team titles and everything in that sense. So we'll see where they go with it. Everything on that side. Up next, oh man, I'm not a big fan of this storyline, but I guess this segment wasn't too bad in the end. In the end of it, so I'll give it credit where credit was due. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination and everything in that sense. I thought the promos came off decent. I'm just not a big fan of the announcer storyline. So yeah, Josh Matthews come out. He calls JB into the ring. He tries to do this half-hearted apology. Joseph Parks eventually, part of the apology is like he doesn't call himself the greatest announcer of all time. He calls it to be JR. He apologizes to Dave Pinzer and says he followed him now. He unblocked him and followed him on Twitter and everything in that sense. And then eventually Joseph Park comes out, and basically that's where it kind of goes to the whole thing of Josh kind of showing his true colors. Because obviously Joseph Park says you shouldn't shake his hand, anything in that sense, with everything that's going on. And then Josh kind of turns it around, and he starts basically laying in and says that, yeah, I accept that match, I have a partner, and that he will reveal himself when the time is right. So Joseph Parks basically, Josh had made mention, it's like, oh, Joseph Parks wants to fight me one-on-one, and then Parks kind of challenges him to that match, and it was going to happen right then and there. And then lo and behold, Scott Steiner shows up, and he's on Josh's side. So it's going to be Josh Matthews and Scott Steiner going up against, I guess, Joseph Park or Abyss, whichever one it ends out being, in that sense, and Jeremy Borash at Slammiversary. First of all, it's May 25th, and they have a whole nother month of this. I mean, they've been going on with this for quite a while, and now they've got to hold off on the match until July 2nd. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not, even though this segment I thought came off rather good, I don't care. I just don't care about that storyline at all. It left a bad taste in my mouth to begin with. And then, of course, Jeremy Borash left the commentator's booth and Josh Matthews takes over. So you went through that whole spiel again where they aren't, where they're referencing it pretty much at any given time that they really want to, while they're still calling the action to go along with it. But yeah, still not caring about this storyline. I mean, I like the twist with having Scott Steiner in there, but geez, they brought Scott Steiner into this as well. That's what you kind of got to be thinking. It's like, oh, geez, they brought Scott Steiner into this. Feel bad for Scott Steiner at that point. But yeah, that's where they're going, and they got to hold off on the match until July 2nd. So after this, you had a promo with Eli Drake. He basically is cutting his promo, saying that how he's held back by the management and everything in that sense. This also brings in Moose as well, because he had done some because him and Chris Adonis have been attacking Moose recently. Drake kind of, I won't say goes, but he challenges him to a grand championship match for next week, which Moose does accept. And then Drake and Moose kind of brawl, which also Chris Adonis comes in there as well to kind of, give the favor towards Eli Drake for the time being. Again, not a bad segment here. I mean, a lot of these segments were actually kind of good. It's just a matter of how the storylines end up working in the end. This was a good one, though. Davey Richards and Angelina Love going up against Eddie Edwards and Alicia. This was a good match. Good mixed tag match. You had Alicia and Eddie Edwards pick up the victory in the end, with Alicia pinning Angelina Love. And like I said, the match itself was, I won't say there was really anything crazy memorable. You kind of got the normal stuff that you would get from Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards. And then, of course, you had Alicia and Angelina Love doing their thing as well. But it was after the match where Davey Richards and Angelina Love, after they lose the match, they get their heat back by beating down both Alicia and Eddie Edwards, and then Davey Richards handcuffs Eddie Edwards to the ring rope as they set up a table, and Angelina Love puts Alicia through the table itself. It's a good segment. I'm enjoying this storyline, and it's one of the reasons why I'm still watching Impact Wrestling, because I'm enjoying this particular storyline. In general, there's a couple others in there that kind of work. It's just it's that mix of I don't really care about certain things, but hey, these are good over here, so it's at least worth watching for something at this point in time. And this is one of those storylines. I thought they did a good job of continuing on with everything. You have what should have been closure with Eddie Edwards, or at least in some way, shape, or form, you would assume it would be kind of closure with Eddie Edwards and Alicia winning, but then Davey Richards and Angelina Love get their heat back, and Alicia gets put through the table. So they're definitely going to be continuing on with this, which, like I said, I'm enjoying this one. So I'm going to be glad to see a little bit more of this down the road here. Up next, you had a Rockstar Spud bit in the where he was still at home. He said he was going to be here this week, but ends out that he said he needed one more week and he was going to show up next week. And then in the background, and this was absolutely great, good comedy. Like I said, I've been liking the stuff with Breezango and their comedy. The stuff with Rockstar Spud and the comedy this week I thought was good, because you have a bit where all of a sudden his mom, or you hear a woman's voice and he says, "Mom, kayfabe, kayfabe, I'm doing an interview, keep the kayfabe." I was dying when he cut that line. That was good stuff. And Rockstar Spud's actually really good. At least microphone-wise and everything. You don't get to really see him wrestle all that much. He plays that underdog role that doesn't really get a lot of offense in or anything in that sense. But he's good with the microphone. I wish they would let him do more within the ring. I don't really... Like, in the end, he's feuding with Swoggle. At this point. So that is one downside, but this particular segment was rather good, and I like I said, I rather did enjoy this one. So this does bring us to the main event of the night, which was Magnus versus James Storm versus EC3 in that triple threat match. Again, they announced it as no DQ, though all triple threat matches are no DQ. Okay, we'll just, that's one little snippet I don't necessarily like, when they add a stipulation that is already there to it, but whatever on that sense. Now, as the match as a whole, this was a great triple threat match between with all sides. Good usage of obviously just your typical moves and everything in that sense. You got a couple of those Tower of Doom spots with a German suplex into a superplex, and also a powerbomb into a superplex. No, you didn't get that one. You did get the German suplex into a superplex one. They were teasing the other one, but it never ended up happening. And you had good false finishes in there, good usage of the weapons that were around as well. I did enjoy the little storyline that you had Magnus and EC3 kind of going up against James Storm, because that had been kind of their catalyst of everything, where Magnus kind of went after James Storm when he was facing EC3, but EC3 has been going after James Storm as well, so they teamed up for a while to beat him down, only to have it broken up, not on an aspect of, oh, we just need to be fighting each other. No, EC3 accidentally hits Magnus, so typically in the triple threat match, they team up for a little while, and then they just start fighting each other. In this case, it didn't start happening until EC3 actually hit Magnus with a kendo stick, returned, and then the triple threat match was back. The full-on triple threat match was back on. In the end, it looked like James Storm was about to get the win, but EC3 gets rid of him and actually picks up the victory over Magnus. Now, the one thing that they were mentioning throughout this entire time is that this was for number one contendership to the Impact World title. And it does make sense with the way that they've been treating the Global Force Wrestling World Title as kind of that golden ticket. How is Alberto El Patron not in this? So even though EC3 is now deemed number one contender, I'm assuming Alberto El Patron is going to find some way into this over the next couple weeks. But otherwise, this was a great match, fun. I absolutely enjoyed the match. And for the time being, until they obviously do something with El Patron, that EC3 now becomes the number one contender towards Lashley's title. And again, focus on the Impact World Championship, or one of the Impact titles in general. I like it. I like it. But yeah, overall, this is actually a rather good show. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie on that one. Even though storylines that I'm not particularly fond of still had relatively good segments for what they were in every way, shape, or form. Not a big fan of the whole announcer thing with Josh Matthews and JB, but they put on a pretty good segment this week. So I'm not going to lie when something's at least good, but I'm still going to make mention that I still don't care about the storyline all that much. And still not looking forward to the match itself down the line. But this segment in general that they did this week was rather good. The stuff with Rosemary and now Sienna, again, that's going to probably be focal point on the two different titles. I think the Global Force Wrestling titles are kind of pointless to even have in any way. But they're going to be working this storyline, so it kind of works for it. It does bring them together to do some kind of storyline, and the match itself should be interesting to see when they do decide to do that match. The triple threat match was great at the main event. Davey Richards and Angelina Love and Eddie Edwards and Alicia, I thought was really good as well. This was a good episode of Impact this week. And it did come off really good, at least in my own personal opinion on that one. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed everything. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Peace out.